So settling, settling into morning number 3 of the retreat. Something that Ajahn Yaniko mentioned yesterday in his talk last evening was on day 2, as he was pointing out, that's often a difficult day. Still in the process of settling down, but the urges, the underlying motions perking up, and sometimes if they're strong, finding ourselves wanting to just kind of let go or loosen up from the practice and not hold steady and find some sort of distraction or just collapse in a heap, whatever. But the importance of sticking with it and not allowing oneself to succumb to the urges or the underlying tendencies, the defilements of the mind, if you will. And just seeing if sometimes just through patience things will change, which they actually always do in some way or another. And that steadiness of practice, that steadiness of attention helps provide a grounding source for all of the whirling activity of the distractions or the mind that wants to seek some sort of stimulation outside of itself. When he was talking about that, the image came to mind of a simile that the Buddha uses in regard to the 6 sense bases, the 5 physical senses, and then the mind or the intellect aspect of the mind. And it's a well-known simile, but one that is so apt and descriptive. I think it's worth bringing to mind over and over again, and that's of a simile of 6 animals who all have a rope attached to them, tied in a knot in the middle. So the 6 animals being a bird, a monkey, a dog, a hyena or a jackal, a crocodile, and a snake. And each of these 6 animals have a rope tied to them, and they're all joined in a knot in the middle. So they're all joined together in some way. And each one of these animals is intent on getting back to its home base. So the bird tries to fly up into the sky. The monkey tries to jump up and climb up into the canopy of the trees. The dog wants to return to the village. The jackal wants to return to the cemetery, cremation area, or the where the bodies are. The charnel ground is what I was thinking. The crocodile wants to return to the water, the lake, and the snake wants to return to his home, the anthill. So each of these 6 animals is trying to pull all of the other animals to its home base, because they're all tied together in the middle, pulling in one direction, and then one who is the strongest wins for a long time, or for a short period of time, and then when they wear out and their energy wears out, then another one takes control, who is strong, and pulls all of the 6 in that other direction to their home base. And on it goes, one after another, getting tired, then another one taking over, and trying to do the same thing. So these 6 animals are just jerked around by the one who is strongest at any one moment. And the Buddha likens that to our 6 sense bases, that sights and sounds and tastes and smells and tactile sensations and thoughts or emotions are always trying to pull our attention through that sense base into a sense object. So it's this constant motion of being pulled out into a pleasing sight, or being attracted in the converse way to an unattractive sight, or to sounds that are pleasing or unpleasing, and so on through the sense bases, particularly thoughts, pull our attention. And we just keep on getting pulled from one to another when there's the strongest urge, always seeking to attend to something through one of the sense bases when greed, hatred, and delusion are controlling the show. So that's how we spend most of our lives, pulling or letting the sense stimulation pull us out, pull our attention out of its home base, out of its ground. Then the Buddha says, well, suppose someone were to come along and take that rope, or take those ropes with the knot tied in the middle, attached to all those animals, and with that knot, attach it very firmly to a very strong post that's driven into the ground to hold it steady. And then what would happen is that the animals would try and tug and pull each in their own direction, but they wouldn't be able to get anywhere because of this strong post anchoring the whole thing. So eventually, all the animals would settle down, sit down, because they realized that they had this strong post anchoring them to their spot. And then they would settle. And similarly with our mind, that if we can establish a strong ground of mindfulness immersed in the body, then that is our strong central post to keep our attention from running from one sense base to another, from one sense object to another, from one sight, sound, taste, bodily sensation, or thought or emotion. Mindfulness in the body is our ground to keep the mind from darting around from here to there. So that's our ground base to keep us from following our urges, to want to get something we like, want to get away from something we don't like. Staying clearly attentive and aware of the body as it is, the body in and of itself. Another contemplation that I really get a lot of benefit from myself regarding the six sense bases is one where one can systematically go through some of the sense bases to see if we can open and broaden our awareness. We talk a lot about this tradition, or at least some of us in this tradition, not using so much of a very strong, narrow focus in our contemplative practice. In some traditions you sort of get the idea that you're supposed to be shutting out sense data and denying the existence of, or the effect of input through the sense bases, and to try and put oneself again in that sensory deprivation tank to reduce every possible way that we can experience sights and sounds, etc. And to focus solely on one very narrow meditation object with a very exclusionary kind of focus, not wanting to allow data in from the mind or the body. But many of our teachers expand on the notion that a broader kind of awareness is a very useful frame of reference. And one can explore that possibility through examining the way we usually attend to the world through our six sense bases, and see if there's a way to kind of open up and broaden our awareness so that it's not so pinched, not so tight. And since the morning is often a good alert time to practice with a few contemplative strategies, Thought I'd just go through a series of ways of looking at our experience through the sense bases, and it was one that I was practicing with a lot of the afternoon yesterday, and particularly out walking. It was actually quite lovely. Not only was it a beautiful day, but I ended up spending probably more than an hour, maybe an hour and a quarter, just walking back and forth with this contemplation and finding it of great benefit. So people might be interested in that. And you can start with sitting quietly as we are, and then very gently opening your eyes just a bit so that you can focus maybe on a point on the floor or the back of somebody if there's somebody in front of you, in a very casual or very relaxed kind of a way, not with wandering around, not letting your eyes dart from here to there or look at any specific object, but to focus softly in one point, whatever's convenient. But then to allow one's visual field to open and broaden, and so that you're not staring at just one specific point or one specific object, but allowing the full visual field to come into play. So that there's light from the windows, reflection on the floor, some vague images of bodies, but we're not focusing our attention on any one particular place. We're just relaxing that gaze, softening the gaze to allow in forms and colors and light and dark. Again, keeping your gaze steady in one place, but opening the awareness to the full visual field around the edges, and just relaxing to that experience without attaching to any particular point or object. Very soft kind of a open gaze without any particular choice of focus. Not objectifying anything, but just allowing the experience of light and shape to come in through the eyes. And open, relax that sense space so that it's not moving in particularly any one direction. And then as the objectification process slows down or broadens or loosens up, notice that quality of just knowing, that awareness of the visual field. There is an awareness of that experience. With a quiet mind, one can see it as separate from the objects of light and shape that are coming in. There's this quality of awareness, of knowing, of the visual field. So you can gently close your eyes and tune into the sense base of hearing. Again, with that same intention to not just pay attention to one sound or to get trapped up in one sound. Probably the loudest is the sound of my voice. But start to broaden and notice all the other sounds in the room that you can hear. The geese, the background hum of the sound system, maybe people shifting a little bit, or human sounds of different kinds. The little popping of the building, expanding and contracting. Allowing each of those sounds to arise, persist, and pass away. So within that boundary of hearing, there's a spaciousness if we don't attach to one particular sound or the impact that it might have on us. One can even hear the inner sound of what Ajahn Sumedho describes as the sound of silence. There's an internal sound, sometimes in the ear area, or felt as an energetic sound. That slight humming or static kind of sound, the internal sound. So just receiving all those various sounds as they arise and pass away. The steady and grounding post for that sense base is that pure knowing, that awareness of sounds. No matter what the sound is, the knowing is steady. I'm going to skip over smells and tastes. They're a bit subtle when they're not in activation. Turn towards the intellect, particularly the thinking mind. Allow your attention to notice thoughts as they come into the mind, whatever it is, or a mental inclination or mood. See if you can tune into a thought as it arises, as it persists, and as it ceases, and as it picks up again after a pause. Particularly notice the pause in between thoughts, even if it's just a very brief moment. And then notice that quality of just knowing the thinking process. That knowledge, that awareness is steady in between the thoughts, while the thoughts are going on, after the thought disappears. The knowing quality is still there. Tuning into the sense base of the body, tactile sensations. Feeling the body as a whole, noticing where there's pressure, contact. Where there's tightness, scanning through the body, looking for places where there might be tightness or obstruction. Notice when attention reaches one of those, sometimes it just relaxes through pure awareness of that particular spot, just knowing it. Sometimes we'll let it open and relax. Allow kind of broad awareness of the entire body, not fixating on any one spot. But not allowing the attention to move beyond the body. Noticing the subtle shifts of posture as the body constantly seeks comfort. Little twitches around the eyes or the facial muscles. The breathing itself, gently expanding, contracting. The breath energy moving through the whole body. And gently stepping back with our awareness. The Buddha describes it as if you're watching another person sleeping, gently watching their gentle breathing as they're sleeping. from a slight distance. Can separate our knowing quality from the bodily experience itself. Step back and just observe that body with its various movements, in and out breathing. So allowing the awareness to step back from the object. So we can experience the input, the data from the six sense bases in this way, in a very broad, open awareness. But noticing how the quality of knowing is the same. Even when our attention moves from one sense base to another, as it will, that quality of knowing is steady, firm, always present. So as we practice through the day, whether we're sitting or walking, standing, lying down, any of the four postures, we can use this contemplation to broaden our awareness, broaden our attention, to not be exclusive of sensory data, but not to be drawn into any stories or aspects, the signs and features, not to be drawn into the signs and features of the experience, just to allow the data to pass through the mind, pass through this knowing quality. So we don't have to be sitting in a super quiet place with no stimulation to attain that sense of non-attachment and peace. The non-attachment and peace of that knowing quality. So sit quietly for another 15 minutes or so before the bell rings.